Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video for Nier on the PlayStation 3. This is a continuation of a series I've been doing. I've been playing through this game rather slowly. I started this earlier this year and didn't get very far into it at first, and I took a long break from it, several months actually, and just restarted, not restarted, but picked it back up a few weeks ago. And I've been making good progress. So here I'm finishing up the Forest of Myth, and this area is really cool only because it's a nice tribute to the text adventure games from companies like Infocom in the 80s, such as Zork and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Wishbringer, games like those. And it's done really well with good writing, and you have to solve some puzzles and riddles. And the great thing about those areas is, even though the text is very serious, Nier and Grimoire Vice, they have fun with it, and I like that Nier is always complaining. He's I really am enjoying his character, because he has like right here, he has a very strong connection to his daughter Yona. But at the same time, when he's out in the field and talking to people, he'll say stuff like, I'm gonna put that little bastard in a headlock and drag him back, and stuff like that. He's very gruff and very straightforward. But that's what I like about him. I think it's funny that he's very, very rough around the edges, but he's super dedicated to finding a cure for his daughter, and so I like that about him a lot. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why people have fallen in love with this game, is the story and the relationships that are built between the characters exceptionally well. Something I've mentioned before is that the story in this game is definitely one of its highlights, and it's surprising how good and funny and mature it is compared to so many other JRPGs that tend to be very immature, silly messes of just threads that go all over the place, and they try to tie it all up tidily at the end, and sometimes it works, oftentimes it doesn't. Whereas Nier, it's been pretty consistently good from the beginning all the way to here, and it just keeps on getting better as each layer of a character's personality and background is exposed. You really get you come to really care for them in a real way, which is pretty surprising. You don't get that often in video games, and I would never have expected that from a game like this from Square Enix and Cavia. And if I'm not mistaken, Cavia did some pretty terrible PlayStation 2 era games that were similar to this in terms of genre, third person action maybe. I wish I could remember the names of them, but I know I've seen their name before on other games that I've checked out in the past, and they really didn't do anything for me. So when I saw that they were the developer on this, I was, I guess, understandably skeptical. And, I'm glad I didn't just brush it off and not play it. And there's varying opinions on this, or very polarized opinions on this game. I think there's one side that really loves it, and I think they make up the majority. And then there's another half of people that can't stand it and think it's terrible. And I guess if you don't care about things like story and characters and music, those presentation pieces of a game, if those things don't matter to you and you just want to play it for the gameplay, then I could see how you wouldn't like this game, because those individual elements, the gameplay and the traversal, platforming, and the fighting, they're pretty mediocre. They're okay. They get the job done, but they're not going to win any awards for those aspects of Nier. But if you do like those other things, the qualities I mentioned, and which is the characters and writing and story, and especially the music, then you're in for a treat. And those bits actually elevate the rest of the game. Like here, the Fisherman's Gambit side quest, where you have to catch all of these fish for this resident of Seafront. Terribly boring, but thankfully the fishing mechanic is very easy. So here I'm catching the various fish, and once the fish tugs on your on the lure, just depending on which way Nier is leaning, that's the way you got to push the left analog. So if he's leaning to the left, you kind of push down into the left, and opposite to the right. And if he's straight up and down, just hold down. So it's very easy to catch fish, but the number of fish you have to catch, 10 here, another 10, 7, 5, it gets old. And you catch all the fish, and there's a random element to it as well, in that you won't always catch the fish you want when you want to, I mean. But thankfully, the bigger fish will tug on the lure a little differently. So if you're trying to catch I think it's like the black bass or the redfish, you'll see your pole tug like twice instead of just once. So if you see that, you'll know that fish is on the line. And if not, you can reel back your lure and not lose the bait. So there are little things like that will keep your frustration level to a minimum, even though the time you're going to be investing in each of those quests is pretty significant. And that's another thing I want to talk about in this video is the structure of this game and its side quests. It's it's very MMO like. You'll talk to a character that has a specific thought bubble over their head, and they'll ask you to do something for them, which more often than not is a fetch quest where you have to gather a bunch of stuff. And actually, I'm going to come back to that. I want to talk about this area specifically right now. This mansion where you meet Emil, or Emil, I can't remember how to say that name. Maybe Emil? I guess there's a character in The Sopranos from the first episode, Emil, that gets killed. Spoilers, I guess, for people who haven't watched The Sopranos. Not a big deal. Anyway, so this area is neat because it's very Resident Evil like. It's kind of their homage to survival horror games, complete with the awkward scene cuts where you're running and the camera angle will just abruptly change to a different one. And if you're holding a direction to move, you'll continue running in the direction you were, even though the direction you're pointing with the analog stick is different. So you just saw in that room, I was totally confused, and I continue to be throughout this entire area, which is frustrating, but it doesn't last that long. But I just thought it was cool that Kevia put that in there. So they have it's almost like everything but the kitchen sink in terms of different genres and varieties that they've put into this game, which I think is great. I think it keeps things fresh, and you'll always be kind of looking forward to, okay, what kind of weird curveball are they gonna throw next in terms of style or tribute to maybe a genre that Cavia's worked on before. And so kind of getting back to what I was talking about with the MMO quest structure, I think just like I was talking about with how the various bits of Nier in terms of gameplay are pretty mediocre, so are the quests. The quests themselves are nothing original. It's like I said, it's go fetch this item, bring it back, tell the person that originally asked me for it, that you did it. Now go get me this other stuff. Find, 30 or 40 different items, some of which could be rare drops. So you end up having to kill a bunch of animals in the hopes that you'll get the item you need, and then you still need another 5 of them. So that sort of quest structure is something I just don't like. It's something I'll do, but it's not very interesting, and it's something I didn't like doing when I was playing WoW or Final Fantasy 11. It's just that sort of thing. And even Dragon Quest 9, there's a lot of that in Dragon Quest 9, and that's why I never finished all the side quests. I did a lot of other stuff that wasted away probably an entire year of my life, but at the same time, I did those other things because I thought they were fun, versus just finding random things to complete a arbitrary quest. And you could argue that you're doing that here, and it is very similar to those other games. But I would say that the difference in Nier is that when you're doing those side quests and not just taking them on but completing them, what you get is some pretty good story and conversation between your party's characters and the NPCs of the game. And so that right there, I think, is the driving force behind why I'm trying to do as many, if not all, of the quests in Nier. They're not required, but they give you items and money and things that will help you along the way. And I think you even get some weapons, which I think are required for one of the endings. So, not to get too far off topic, but so I think the reward of Nier's story is what drives me to do all the quests, and that might be the key to side quests in games in general, right? Is what is my reward besides just money or an item? Am I going to learn something about the character? Am I going to learn something about one of my party's characters or something in the world? That stuff's pretty interesting to me, especially when the story is done as well as it is in this game. And so, yeah, that's I think what is keeping me going. Now, one other thing I did want to talk about in terms of the quests is coming up later in this video, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about it then, but because I don't go all the way through the end in this video, I should probably talk about it now because I won't have time to at the end. So one thing that Nier does that I don't like is after you get past a certain point in the story, certain quests will no longer be completable. So if you have, several quests in your log that you're working on, and you happen to trigger the event that launches the final act or final scenes of this act, you won't be able to finish them. And hopefully you have a save game from before where you can go back, but at the same time, if you go through the fight that happens at the end of this video, it's a long one, and I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people that will want to go back to their old save game to do all those other side quests and then go through the fight again. Maybe they will. And so I think that's an interesting, I'd call it a design flaw. Cavia could have easily just put in one little warning message that says, would you like to save your game? And just be aware that from this point forward, you will not be able to complete certain quests. That would have been very helpful. And at that point, I would have, known to save in a different slot, which you should be doing anyway. And I probably would have reloaded a previous save game to go back and do those side quests. Thankfully, as far as I've been able to tell, you aren't penalized by not completing every side quest in the game. There are side quests that will feed into your trophy tallies, but I don't believe you have to do every side quest in order to platinum this game. So that's good. Not that I'm a trophy hunter by any stretch, but for those that are, that would have been very, very frustrating if you had gone through the entire game or gotten through to the second half of it, only to find out that if you didn't have a save game from before, that you would basically have to start the game over from scratch. Because the other thing I learned is after you beat the game and you go back through for New Game Plus, all the New Game Plus playthroughs start after that point that I was just talking about. So there's no way to finish those uncompletable quests from before. So yeah, again, a choice that Cavia made that I don't like, but ultimately isn't detrimental to the overall experience. And really, I mean, the experience here is the story. And I've heard that there are at least 2 endings that are must-sees. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in my future New Game Plus playthrough. Now, sorry that I've kind of blabbed through half of this video talking about things that are not even related to what you're watching. But the thing that is interesting, or maybe not interesting, but this video, as you've seen, is mostly me completing side quests, with the exception of the first part, which was the Forest of Myth, and then the part in the mansion where you meet Emil and you defeat that one grimoire. And now you are working again towards the cure for your daughter. This scene right here actually was pretty touching to me. He's back here caring for his daughter, and Yona says something to the extent of, please don't hate me because of this disease. And that kind of hurts. As someone who's been through situations like that, and even if there are people out there listening who have, even younger siblings or children of their own, that's pretty hard to hear. And again, it just speaks to how good the story has been in this game. You're off doing all these things, and all this time passes. I mean, even the fishing is funny because you'll talk to the fisherman, and it'll say, oh yeah, 2 months pass or a week passes, and so all this time passes in the game, supposedly, but it doesn't really affect Yona's situation. I mean, can you imagine if there was a time limit on when you had to get all this stuff done, and there was actually a counter in the game that took away weeks or months every time you did these side quests, and if you went over a certain time, Yona would die? That would suck. And so, kind of getting back to that scene with Nier and Yona, I love stuff like that. Or even the scene that was shown earlier between Emil and Kaine. Again, very, very touching and sensitively done. And I love that about this game, that there are these characters that are so rough, so vulgar at times, especially Kaine, but they have very, very good hearts and care very deeply about certain people in this world. And so that's great. Like Kaine and Fira from The Facade, that's wonderful stuff. It really adds to their relationship and cements in your mind that location is somewhere you want to return to, and characters you want to talk to more or talk to again. And going back to The Facade is something I'll be doing pretty soon, I think. I'm sure there's going to be some quests that require me to go there to get items and things, and hopefully there's more story to be had with that location, since it was rather short the first time you go there, since most of that happens in the temple, not in the facade. Yeah, like here, 1 month later. It's funny. So he's you're complaining about working 1 month straight on the boat, and I think later he makes him do sit-ups to buff up his arms, which makes no sense. Why they're sit-ups and not push-ups, I have no idea. Anyway, not important, I guess. And so yeah, this as I mentioned, these parts are me just going through and taking care of these side quests, building up my fishing skills. And I think this is where I catch the breach, I believe, the redfish. So it does take longer, and I think you can catch these bigger fish with less fishing skills. It just takes so much longer. I think I tried to catch a black bass in the home village, and I think I only had maybe level 3 level 3 fishing skill, and it felt like it took about 5 minutes, which is ridiculous, but it's possible. So if you really, really need that fish early, you can go ahead and do it that way. And so, yeah, here I think he does the 200 sit-ups to buff up his arms. So yeah, the rest of this video now is heading into the final segment of the first half of Nier. I guess you can call it the first half. And this will all take place in the village where you grow up. Not grow up, but where Yona is. So here, you get the Vapor Moss for Popola, and then that triggers Emil, who comes staggering into your town. And so I'm like, okay, I'll see what he's saying. Thought Bubble is in the right place. So he's exhausted. You take him to Popola. And then this pretty much triggers the last fight, which is actually really cool. But as I mentioned before, once you get through this, there's no going back. And so, again, if you have quests that you're working on, I think the only one that carries over is the Fisherman's Gambit series. Those carry over to the second half, but I think anything else will get put into your uncompletable quest section in your log. So just be aware of that. So here, shades are attacking your village. And after you take some of the lower level ones out, the main, or the big shade, will appear, which is pretty awesome looking. Now, something I mentioned when you fought the shade in the Airy is that they did a really good job with these bosses. They have a great sort of I want to say Shadow of the Colossus feel, or even some of the creatures that you may have seen in some of the Miyazaki films. Really well done. They have a nice weight to them, and they are pretty terrifying to look at. So they did a great job designing these and making them feel very menacing. And so the first stage of it is, you will have lower level shades attacking you, but you just have to jump over the blast wave when he slams his arm down, and eventually you'll get that marker that will allow you to do one of these major attacks and move on to the next stage of this boss battle. So this is pretty gruesome stuff. Rip its arm off. Bleeds, but then he's like, nope, I'm gonna grow another arm. So yeah, this is a great segment. And again, another thing I wanted to mention is, I have to apologize for not doing these videos as fast as maybe I want to. I'll play this game and then I'll take like a couple weeks break away from it, which is very strange when you think about it. But the thing that I'm finding is that I'll binge play it, and I really love it when I'm playing it, but I'll play it for hours. Like this video, even with all the editing I did, is still a half hour long, and this represents me playing the game for a couple days. I played it for 2 days, some pretty long play sessions, and eventually finally stopped and did the recording. But I played it a bunch and then I stopped. So one thing that I've done in the past is take a break, and I guess I already said that, but I think the reason is because of things like this. Like this boss battle is not just long, but it's pretty tiring, and I mean that in a good way. You kind of feel exhausted after you fight creatures like this. It's not just because the battle is lengthy and looks cool, but there's a lot at stake, and that's pretty amazing. That he's now going to start heading towards the library where Popola and Emil are, and so there's a real I guess risk involved here, and a real danger that again isn't as successfully done in a lot of games. And so I was pretty nervous at this point as he starts walking towards you, and especially when he starts climbing the hill to the library. It's just, again, really well done. And even though each individual battle that you're doing here isn't all that complicated, you just kind of got to beat away until you get the prompt that will let you move on to the next stage. But yeah, again, I think it's the context of these battles that make them so memorable and so emotionally involving. So a little eye candy here with the attacks. These are really well done. Just a lot of weight. I like how after the strike, the boulders from the ground go flying up. And I guess the air impact. So just really nice looking stuff. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of running out of things to say just because this video's so long, and this fight's not over. you keep on going. Just when you think that this is it, you've done your kind of finishing move. Pretty awesome looking. He falls and dies, or so you think. It keeps on going. You go inside the library next, and he comes back for more. So really, really good design. I don't know if it's overkill to have him keep coming back, but he does come back, and it triggers the next part of this scene, which is pretty darn cool. And so you're inside the library, and I've cut out a lot of the low-level monster fights just because they're not that interesting. And so here he is. I think, again, the head is just coming after you. So you go through this additional battle, which I think is actually harder than the one that took place outside. Maybe because it's in such a confined area, but you have to take care of his beat down all 5 of the tentacles, and then eventually hit the head. So I just, well, not hit the head. You don't want to do that here, but yeah, take him out. I cut out most of that sequence because it's not that interesting. And one more major beat down. then some pretty shocking stuff happens. So knock him down in the basement, and kind of somehow holds the door closed, and then Nier gets skewered, and you're like, by who? So you're like, okay. Does Nier die? Not sure. And then this guy appears. This shady guy who looks oddly similar to Nier. And I don't know anything about the story that happens after this part, but there's Yona. And they show Nier's face, and then they show him, and it's like, huh, kind of looks the same. So there's probably something there that will become clearer later in the story. More shades come out, and then Grimoire Noir, who is somebody that you've been looking for quite some time in this game. And so, yeah, this is a major story part. I kind of stop it here, just because I think it was a good place to stop, and then lead into the next section of the game. So yeah, I think I'm tapped out for stuff to talk about, but thanks again for checking out this video and listening to me babble about not so much the stuff you're actually seeing in the video, but just about Nier and some of the related genres, and the things I really like and some of the things I don't like. So we'll see you next time, and have a good one.